Joining me now on another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show with the Knicks finally back at Madison Square Garden for 2 straight games before they go back on the road for another road trip. They get to welcome in the 21-7 Milwaukee Bucks, who are also 16-3 in their last 19 games. We remember them from the in-season tournament, where I'm pretty sure they just hit another 3-pointer that counted toward that game. But the Knicks will get another look at the Bucks, but this time on their home court. And then on Christmas, they'll get to do it again. Joining me to talk about this home-and-home matchup against the Bucks from the GSPN, the Gyro Sports Podcast, Gyro Step, Podcast Network. Ty, I know you're probably going to watch the intro to this. I'm eventually going to get the name of the network correct. From GSPN, the Gyro Step Podcast, his co-host, Mr. Rohan Katti. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the invite. Always happy to talk to Bucks basketball, and especially against an opponent like the Knicks, who we've had a lot of matchups. This is going to be 4 matchups in the first sort of third of the season. So it's been a lot of Bucks Knicks, and we got 2 more in a row.
Yeah, you think you consider it a lot of matchups. Imagine being the team that doesn't have Dame Lillard and Giannis, and got an extra game against them as a reward for making it to the in-season tournament. I wanted to start in a place that is not specifically related to this matchup, but I want to get a bit of the take cycle that's currently going on right now. And I don't even have an opinion on what Becky Hammon said about Jalen Brunson, or what the national discourse just seems to always be about the Knicks. But I guess that actually is where I want to go with this. It's the national coverage of your team is always so generic and engagement baity. And what Becky Hammon said was correct. There's not a long history of short guards leading a team to a title. And it's we didn't do this with Ja. We didn't do this with Chris Paul. We didn't do this with Donovan Mitchell. We didn't do this with Dame. We were just oh, they're awesome. And we just enjoyed them. But when it came to the Knicks, it's yeah, but he too little is the thing that Becky Hammon said, which, okay, so he too little for what? I can't just enjoy good basketball. As someone who roots for a team and covers a team that's also been in the national discourse over the majority of the last 5 or 6 years, what's the thing that annoys you the most about how the Bucks are discussed, or how they've been discussed over the years? Or is there anything that annoys you about how the Bucks have been discussed or covered?
Do you have 2 hours for me to just on this topic?
By all means, this is your therapist couch.
I consider podcasting to be therapy for me. So first off, if you're it's very dichotomous coming from a Knicks perspective versus a Bucks perspective in terms of national media attention. Because for the longest time, we've had all of this discourse surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks. When's Giannis leaving? When is everyone leaving? It's always, you have to keep the guy happy, or he's always threatening his way out. As soon as he signed this extension this past offseason, which he wasn't really expected to sign, I didn't expect him to sign at a 3-year extension. The immediate reaction was, oh, okay, cool. So it's not next summer you have to worry about, but 2 summers from now, teams are going to start lining up. And it's bro, he just signed his 2nd long-term extension in Milwaukee. I don't understand really why there's so much fervor to get these guys out of Milwaukee, especially when small markets have been starting to do really well. The Indiana Pacers have been a fun story this season. The Minnesota Timberwolves have been an amazing team this season. You have teams like the Denver Nuggets, who aren't a traditional small market, but still in a media perspective, a small market. They just won the title. The Bucks won the titles 2 years ago. It's a lot of these small markets sort of thriving. The Lakers won 1 title in the past 15 years. It's just, they've won 1 title. It's not the big markets really thriving. It's these smaller mid markets who are starting to thrive. So I don't really understand the discussion of always needing guys to get out. Now, while it is the opposite discourse for the Knicks, where it's when are they getting their guy? When are they getting their guy? When are they getting their guy? And in regards to the Becky Hammon thing, I almost think Kendrick Perkins is more at fault for that than Becky Hammon.
Really? Okay.
Because like you started saying, yeah, Jalen Brunson's not like a big guy. There's not been a history of traditional like best players on the title winning team being like smaller players. So Becky Hammon just saying that in sort of like a throwaway comment is not unreasonable of a take, but Perk does what Perk likes to do and just make things into a bigger thing, because she didn't really want to have it be a massive discussion or anything. It was just a one-off comment, but then it just got engaged and it became this whole thing. And you have like this championship level coach having to apologize on Twitter, and it's just like, what are we doing here? So I blame Perk more than anything, but I understand the frustration with Becky Hammon's comment for sure, because you don't see that happening with guys like Ja. Obviously not Steph, but Steph's one of one. But you don't see that sort of happening, though. I do think Knicks fans would appreciate this sort of discourse rather than Ja discourse.
Well, yes, I would rather them talk about Jalen Brunson too small, other than the other things we talk about with Ja Morant. Fair, that's fair. I think the only pushback I'll give is like the conversation was rooted, and I think to your point about Perk, like this is something he's part of every day on that show. So it's I guess part of the part for the course when it comes to how the Knicks are talked about. And to your point, like it's never talked about like what the Bucks have built, despite being a mid to small market.
They're small,
right?
They're a small market, yeah.
So but they've been able to build a contender that's continued to keep their guy happy over the years, whether it be the Drew Holiday trade, whether it be the Dame Lillard trade. Every single time he's hinted at potentially looking elsewhere, putting pressure on the organization, they've answered the call. And like their discourse could just be how good they've been, what their defenses look like, what their offenses look like over the last 19 games, and then how their defense has improved since making the change against the Knicks I believe it was November 3rd. We remember it well because it was a night for Julius Randle. But like putting Brook back and drop, an actual like intelligent basketball discourse. Like if I want to hear from two people that are supposed to be basketball experts, that's the type of discourse I want to hear. Not every single B block or A block with, well, what do the Knicks still need? And it's like, they have the 10th best record in the NBA despite not having the thing that you say they need. Let's talk about what they're doing right. Let's actually have that conversation. And it's become exhausting. From your perspective, it's exhausting. Like, well, when is Giannis going to leave? And with us, it's like, well, when is someone going to go to the Knicks? It's like, we're kind of good right now. Yeah. So it's literally like you said, it's almost like
people should enjoy good basketball. Mm-hmm. It's almost like basketball is like the best sport in the world and people should enjoy it.
Yeah. Because like the conversation, the topic that was led to the question, I guess, that was asked to Becky was like, what do the Knicks still need? And she was like, they're good or whatever, but they don't have a guy. And then Perk came in with his like, they got Jalen Brunson, and her knee-jerk response was he too little. And I just was like,
what are we doing?
That's the discourse. Like, yeah. What are we doing?
No,
why does that have to become the thing?
I completely agree with you. That should not be the discourse surrounding the New York Knicks. They're a good basketball team. It should not be the discourse surrounding the Milwaukee Bucks. They're a good basketball team. These are two like solid basketball teams trying to establish themselves early on in the season. The discourse should not be, oh, this guy needs a guy, or what does a loss mean for the Bucks going forward? It's like, no, these are two teams who are solid enough to like determine their own destiny this season.
I can see that being very taxing, that every loss is like, is this Armageddon? Now, it's one thing if it's just Knicks Twitter thinking, like the Knicks lost to the Bucks, to the Jazz. They lost to the Bucks twice. We've been over that. But they lost to the Jazz last Wednesday. And it was this like, oh no, like the sky is now going to fall. We're rolling down head first down the mountain. We'll be under 500 by Christmas. They're 3-1 since then. Like the way that the Knicks have continued to bounce back, I think, has shown, like you said, that they are a good team. And look, they're going to really be tested in these two matchups against a really good Bucks team. I'm looking through the lineup data as we transition into this matchup. And like I did this with Ty the last time he was here, but I'll do it with you too. Like last year with the Knicks, like while they were 47-35 and they had a good net rating and a top 3 offense, right? There's a very clear date that you have to point to and then like calculate the season from there. And it's December 4th, because that's when they went to the 9-man rotation. That's when they like sent Devin Fournier to the bench forever. That's when they benched Cam Reddish and Derrick Rose and like played Emmanuel Quickly more and pivoted to a more defense with Deuce McBride until the Josh Hart trade. But from that point on, December 4th, they were 37-22 and one of the better like top 6 or 7 teams record wise in the NBA, which led to them finishing top 8 at the end of the year. With the Bucks, now when I go look at their data, I just sort from November 3rd on. And to the Knicks fans that know how we like to look at the advanced metrics, from November 3rd on, the Milwaukee Bucks are first in offense with 123.6 points per 100 possessions. They are third in net rating behind OKC and Philadelphia. They still have a 9 more points per 100 possessions is their net rating, which would be one of the greatest net ratings of all time. And then like they're 28th in defense overall. But if you take out those first 6 games of the season, when they were playing a defense that probably wasn't good to their personnel, they're up to 12th in over that stretch. So during this 16-3 stretch that the Bucks have been on, 12th is a respectable defense, especially when you pair it with the number 1 offense in the league. Am I painting the correct picture that it's really from that point on, they've just been rolling ever since?
No, that's the perfect date to really take things from, and it's a good way to look at it. That's how Ty and I have been doing it as well, because they went to a defense that was more suited to their personnel, a base drop featuring Brook Lopez if he's in any pick and roll actions. But yeah, I think that's a great way to paint the picture. Is that I like the way that you said that 12th rated defense is good enough when you have the best offense, because that's really what this Bucks team is now. They're not like a grinded out defensive team anymore. They're an offensive powerhouse that you're going to need to try and outscore every night, and you're going to lose that battle on most occasions because they just have so much offensive firepower. And if you can just have an average to an above average defense, that's good enough. But you can see, like, during this first 28 games of this season, and especially in the 16-3 stretch since November 3rd, you really see that this Bucks team is starting to figure out how do they adjust to that? How do they adjust to not being an insane high-level defense, which is what they were under Mike Budenholzer. And with Drew Holiday at the starting point guard position, is they were a defensive powerhouse. That's where they made their bread and butter. That was their identity. They were a grinded out team that really, really, really struggled to score the ball when it came to playoff time in a half-court offense. And that's why you see them getting bounced in the first round last year. Obviously, Giannis injury and all that, and Chris still working his way back. But still, they got bounced in the first round. And it's because they could not score, and they couldn't play defense either, which was their calling card. But if you can't play defense and you can't really play offense, you're not going to succeed, which is how you lose in 5 games to an 8 seed. That's how that happens, is when you're bad on offense and bad on defense. Like, sometimes basketball analysis is really simple. If you can't score, you can't stop the other team from scoring, you're not going to win. And that's what we saw. But now this team has found its half-court identity because of Damian Lillard. And he needs no explanation. And especially in these last couple games, he's starting to really, really hit the ground running. He is the type of guy who's really struggled in terms of shooting in the first month of the season, typically like late October, November. But now he's starting to hit his stride. He's making, I think in his last 4 games, he's made like an average of 4 threes a game. And you're starting to see that percentage come up. You're starting to see him more comfortable, especially with Brook Lopez as a screener, being able to get open space. And just the tiniest opening is going to lead to him being able to put up a 3 because he's one of the greatest shooters of all time. These sort of stuff, this sort of offensive powerhouse that we now see in the Milwaukee Bucks is why I feel more confident about them than I did last year. Is because they just need to have, like you mentioned, an average defense. And if you have the highest scoring offense in the NBA, good luck. Because typically, a lot of these high scoring offenses are young run and gun teams that don't know how to play defense. Take the Indiana Pacers into account. After their in-season tournament run, they're 1-3, I believe. Tyrese Halliburton's averaging like less than 16 points a game. Given he's being blitzed so much now,
they're shutting the water off is what they're doing. They're basically like, if you have any other teammate that can make us honor them, we'll honor them. But like you said, they're blitzing him with 3 and 4 guys at this point.
Yeah, the book is out on how to guard them. You just have to recognize that no one else on that team is really going to do anything on offense. Pray Buddy Hield hits a few threes if you're Indiana, but yeah, they're just absolutely blitzing Tyrese Halliburton like before half court. It's ridiculous.
You know what's funny, real quick? The Julius Randle book from the first year that he made All NBA and won Most Improved. The Hawks created a blueprint of just like everybody focus on him, and then the next year, there was nobody to focus on after they just brought that book in and he had his worst season. I liken it a lot to that because then they had to go get Jalen Brunson and it was like, oh, well, now we can't just like triple team or direct all of our attention on offense to this one guy. And I think Halliburton is unfortunately experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, and that's sort of a similar thing about what happened with the Milwaukee Bucks, too, is that, okay, you send all your guys at Giannis, who else is going to be an elite offensive creator? Because Chris Middleton has not been himself for the last 2 seasons because of injury, because of surgery. Drew Holiday is just a mess in the playoffs when it comes to offense. It's a mess. I love Drew Holiday. I hope he retires a Milwaukee Buck. I hope he comes back. But the Celtics fans are going to find out real soon. They're gonna see his shot selection in the playoffs, and they're gonna be like, "What is happening here?" The Ringer is gonna have to write a new column about who actually won the Damian Lillard trade. It might be the team that got Damian Lillard,
which I'm sure they'll spin it a certain way. You know, yeah.
Just a hint. You know, the team that gets the better player usually wins the trade. But that's a whole other conversation.
But first, Pearl Jam. Anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, that's a similar playbook that was thrown to the Bucks. Is like, yeah, just load up on Giannis, send literally 4 or 5 guys at Giannis, and no one else is going to be able to do anything. But now you can't do that because Damian Lillard, and akin to what the Knicks did in getting Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, well, I want to make it very clear.
Similar concept.
I agree. Similar concept. You're right. That it's you have to add a second guy that defenses honor, so that way when you're able to create some advantages on offense. Now, what I've been impressed with in the 2 times, it's really the one time that the Knicks played the Bucks, because early on, I thought the Knicks had a chance to win that game if Julius Randle is like his D- game, not his F++ game. But like the second time was just a 3-point shooting that exists. And it's funny, they're actually, by the numbers, taking less threes and making less threes than they were last year. But they just look so more lethal in the few times that I've watched the Bucks this year. And I mean, can you speak to that? To the Knicks fan that hasn't been paying too much attention to the Bucks since they went, I believe, 100 for 100 in their game against them in the in-season tournament. Do the Bucks still have that dynamic or lethal 3-point threat or attack from 3-point range, I should say?
Yeah, they do. And I think when you compare it to last year, like you said, they're taking less threes, they're making less threes. But what's actually happening here is, while that is very true, is the shot quality is going up. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but they're getting more wide open looks. They're generating higher quality shots. And the thing is, they also have better shooters on this team. Like, first of all, you replace replace Drew Holiday with Damian Lillard. Just a massive upgrade in terms of shot making ability, even though Drew's regular season shooting percentage from 3 last season was actually pretty decent. It was one of the highest shooting regular seasons of his career. But Damian Lillard is just another level. You replace Grayson Allen with Malik Beasley, who is just a gunner from 3, which I appreciate, because Grayson Allen, I love him. I consider him to be my son. I'm glad that he's thriving in Phoenix. I was one of the only people in the Milwaukee Bucks sort of atmosphere that was always supporting Grayson Allen. And I know that's not like a thing I should like go and say.
He's got a look. I think I've come to learn it with how much I've enjoyed DiVincenzo, and you're like the 3rd fan base I think that has told me, whether it be now Phoenix and Utah and Milwaukee, and I'm sure I've known plenty of Memphis as well. I know Duke fans out there that have sang his praises. It's the punchable face for me.
It's a very punchable face.
It's just that it's the only thing. I'm sure he's a great basketball player. He hit a big 3 against the Knicks last year in a game at the Garden, and like I respect his ability. It's a TJ McConnell effect, unfortunately, where I appreciate your game. I respect what you do on the court. you have a very punchable face. It's the entirety of the campaign against them.
For sure. 100%. No disagreements here. None whatsoever. The thing is, like, Grayson Allen, I was very impressed with his ability to really, like, not only try and get 3-pointers off, but try and drive, be like a secondary or tertiary creator, sort of do something when defenses close out on him and like attacking closeouts. The thing is, too often he would try to do something else besides shoot the basketball. Malik Beasley does not have that issue. The thing is with Malik Beasley is he will find his shots and he will get his shots. He knows that he is a 3-point shooter. He knows that's what his role is on this team. So he recognizes that and he takes shots. And he should. He's an elite 3-point shooter, especially this season. But you like also recognizing, like, if he's hot, he will find the ball. The ball finds energy, and he brings a lot of energy, and he will get his shots off. So when I say that the Bucks are a lethal 3-point shooting team, it's not necessarily because of gaudy numbers in terms of like their shot percentage and their shots taken from 3. It's that they're getting higher quality looks from 3, and they have guys who will pay those opportunities off more than they have in previous seasons. You have guys like Damian Lillard, like Malik Beasley, AJ Green, who's probably a relatively unknown player, undrafted out of Northern Iowa last season. And he is a guy who will just, Bucks fans call him Baby Bird because he's like he has like the nose thing. He's broken his nose a few times, and his shooting form kind of looks like Larry Bird's as well. But he is a 3-point shooter. Like, you have to respect him. And he's big. I kind of like to think of him as like a Kyle Korver-esque, because when most people think of Kyle Korver, they do not think 6'7". Like, Kyle Korver was probably the least 6'7" guy who's ever played in the NBA, because he just does not play like he's 6'7", because he's Kyle Korver. He's gonna come off pin downs, hit threes, but he was passable because he wasn't going to get attacked too much on defense because he's a big guy, and just sometimes size really makes up for defensive lapses. He wasn't the best. Don't get me wrong. He was not a good defender. AJ Green is not a good defender, but you can't abuse him on defense, which is why I think he's probably one guy who's overlooked in Milwaukee's rotation.
We were doing a watch along on playback, and then for our YouTube audience during the in-season tournament game. And when AJ Green checked in, we were very much like, who? And I was like the wide receiver from the Bengals? Like, wait a minute, who is this? And then he hits 3 threes in the next like 4 minutes. Like, oh, so it's another one that just apparently just grows on trees. And again, that was a barrage of 3-point making that the Bucks put on the Knicks that night.
We need to have, like, remember when all the 3 Matt Ryans met in New Orleans or whatever
exactly.
It was? We need to have AJ Green of the Bucks meet the wide receiver AJ Green.
And just have them take maybe do the Spider-Man meme and just have them both point at each other and do it that way.
Hilarious image.
To your point about the shot quality, now this isn't obviously a perfect tracking metric, but I went to NBA stats and looked up the shot dashboard of open 3-point field goals. So that's closest defender 4 to 6 feet away. Bucks are second with 16.1 open threes generated per game. And the only team they're behind is the Celtics. So to your point, while their 3-point frequency isn't the most, although it is 18% of their shots are 3-pointers, they're, like you said, they're getting the second most open threes per game. And, we'll see if they're able to take advantage of it again in this matchup against the Knicks. I want to just hint on the Celtics, but you talked about Drew Holiday a bit and how they're eventually going to find out. The only team I think I would put up with the Bucks right now is the Celtics. I have a bit of a Sixers agenda. Them beating Minnesota lowered it a bit because that's a quality victory. I was just very frustrated by their schedule just being like the Pistons or the Wizards or the pick a tanking team every night, and beating Minnesota changes that a little bit. But how do you feel so far about the Celtics so far this year? And not even just the Drew of it all, but like as currently constructed, do you like your team in a 7-game series?
Oh, the Celtics are a phenomenal basketball team. There's no denying that. They have the best record in the NBA for a reason. Mm-hmm. They have a very, very good roster, up and down. It's probably the best starting 5 in the NBA. It's just they're going to be a very, very tough team. to beat. If you're the Milwaukee Bucks, one thing that they don't have this season is a guy to just put on wings. And it's funny saying that because their guy was Drew Holiday, who got absolutely roasted in the first round of the playoffs last season by Jimmy Butler. So it's kind of maybe they have the same amount of elite wing defenders that they did last year. But just the wing tandem of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they really, really, really are they make me nervous because what do the Bucks have to really counter that? Now, maybe that's just me not completely shifting away from the mindset of, oh, this is a good defensive Bucks team, and I should be thinking of how are the Celtics going to be able to outscore the Bucks, but it still worries me because the Celtics, not only do they have a good offense, they have a very good defense too. And it's just going to come down to one, health, because one guy who's sort of been in and out of the lineup, and I'm never going to be someone who obviously advocates for injury. I hope everyone is healthy so we can get a true matchup. How is Kristaps Porzingis going to hold up? That's going to be a big thing because he's sort of an X factor against the Milwaukee Bucks because they also have a stretch five who will just be a gunner from 3-point range. Like he will get shots up. Given the Bucks also have a 7'1" guy to really cover him, so he can't get as easy of shots, but he can shoot over anyone. It doesn't really matter with his length, with his size, and his shot. His shot is so quick. It's so quick. It's so fluid. Is he going to be healthy? Is Al Horford going to be taking any trips to Germany anytime soon? That's going to be something to watch for. I swear he did it when he was in OKC. That's the only explanation for whatever voodoo magic is going on here. How is he going to look? He is 37 years old. So we're going to see how that's going to hold up because the front court, I think, is going to be where this matchup is won or lost for either team. Is how do the Celtics really take on the Giannis and Brook front court, and how do the Bucks handle the Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis front court? If they're going to have a lot of lineups where those two are out there together. How does that really work? Or each of them individually? That's going to be what I watch for, which is why I'm really waiting to see how Bossman 99 Jay Crowder comes back at looking. We have a bit on our pod where we only refer to him as Bossman 99. One time we got a YouTube comment because we literally did not say the name Jay Crowder. We got a YouTube comment saying, "Who is Bossman 99?" So we were just like, okay, maybe we've leaned too far into the bit.
Unaware, yeah.
So we make sure to say it at least. We make sure to say Jay Crowder, the name, at least once. So how does Jay Crowder look when he comes back from his abdominal surgery? Because he's that guy. He's going to be the guy who's going to try to take on those defensive wing assignments because who else is it going to be?
Yeah, not anybody else.
Who else is it going to be? Is it going to be? It's not going to be Malik Beasley. Though he has been trying, it's not going to be Malik Beasley. How does Marjon Beauchamp look? How does Andre Jackson Jr. look? That's a tough assignment for a first and second year player. It's going to be hard to find those defenders to take on Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Maybe Jason Tatum does it to himself, but we'll see. We'll see. But that matchup, just overall, it does scare me. It does scare me because it's an elite team. They're a very, very good basketball team.
So is there anything else in the East that scares you? Whether a potential matchup with Milwaukee, obviously the Miami of it all. I think they just kind of scare everybody.
Miami has put the fear of God in me, so I will always
talking to the choir right now. Believe me, I get it. I said this to Ty last time he was here. Like I think even the Celtics pods that I've done here, we all just kind of looked up at the end of the postseason, like how do we lose to this team? Like, wait a minute, they were an 8th seed that limped into the playoffs, lost to the Hawks. But like, I hear you about the fear of God in Miami. Is that the only fears that you might have come playoff time? Is there a consensus among Bucks fans that may be like another thing that is fearful other than like a matchup against the Celtics?
I think we can talk about your Sixers agenda a little bit. I share the same agenda in that I do not believe in the Philadelphia 76ers. I genuinely do not, because what we've seen year in and year out is just a drop off in the postseason from Joel Embiid. And even though they don't have James Harden anymore, so they don't have that drop off, how does Tyrese Maxey rise to the occasion? How does literally anyone else rise to the occasion? Because one thing the Bucks have is they have size. They have a lot of size to match up with Joel Embiid. One thing we saw in the first game of the season, Bucks Sixers, one thing we never saw under Mike Budenholzer, when Brook Lopez got into a little bit of foul trouble, because Brook is like a big, strong guy who can kind of hang with Embiid a little bit. He's still going to foul him and get roasted a little bit because he's not as quick as Joel, but he can hang with him a little. But one thing we saw once Brook went out of the game is Giannis took on the Joel Embiid assignment. Giannis is quicker than Embiid. He can move his body. He can stay with him. He does get into a little bit of foul trouble sometimes. He'll try to reach, try to do too much. But Giannis is a former defensive player of the year for a reason, is that he can try and take on these sort of matchups. Is he best suited to be an individual one-on-one defender? No, he's a better help defender. But can he take on these massive, massive assignments? And sometimes, yeah, of course he can. That's where we saw, Giannis was able to contain Joel Embiid to the best that anyone can, obviously. But when you have two guys that are capable of trying to contain Joel Embiid, they don't scare me. I do not care if this comes back to bite me. I do not care, because if it does, congratulations, you earned it. But no, the Philadelphia 76ers do not scare me as a matchup with the Milwaukee Bucks, because the Bucks have two guys who are capable of trying to contain Joel Embiid.
Listen, I'm. You talk about the conversation we had at the beginning, where the Knicks potentially getting a guy, might have a lot to do with what Joel Embiid does in the playoffs this year. So potentially
that's the guy, right? Round. That's the guy, right?
It is, but it's like the funny thing about this Knicks season is like the way it's played out. Like the Donovan Mitchell ship had sailed for us because we saw like what the Knicks were without him, and not to say like they couldn't be better. Potentially that offense would be unreal. There's a lot of questions about a Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson backcourt. So the pivot was like, well, what about Paul George? What about Cat? What about Embiid? And I'll be honest, there was a Giannis conversation during the summer. I wanted to see him actually ask out first before I even presented that reality out there. But there were Knicks fans that are like, okay, like that run may be ending. Maybe the Giannis thing could become into fruition. And
which is fair enough. Based on that summer, fair enough.
But look at what's happened to all four of them. The guys I just mentioned. The Clippers I know they lost last night, but they are just rolling right now with this new James Harden experiment. Now, talk about a spontaneously combustible situation. It's anything with James Harden and their injury history, but I recognize how good they've looked. The Timberwolves could make the finals and it wouldn't surprise me. So maybe Cat's not even available. And then Embiid might win another MVP. Looks incredible, sans Harden. And now you're just you're hoping for something crazy to happen come playoff time. And it now has become a Donovan Mitchell thing all over again because of what's happened to the Cavs. And, I think Knicks fans were like, well, we were kind of in for Embiid, but now we need something crazy to happen, which is why I think we'd rather just talk about how good our team is right now as is, rather than who could potentially come save the franchise that we don't think necessarily needs saving,
Yeah, for sure. I do think there is a chance for 76ers craziness, though. I
not ruling it out. I'm just saying, there was a thought going into this year because of where the Sixers started with Harden on the roster, that they could be like a 7 seed, and he was going to pull all the chicanery like he did to the Rockets and just tank the organization. And then Maxey started off averaging 30 a game. The Sixers were like, all right, we're good. Let's just add depth with what we can get back for James.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, they actually look kind of good. I'm with you on the agenda. Regular season has put some of the expectations and plans on hold, at least.
Yeah, that's fair. The Sixers, it's a shame we've never gotten in this era a Bucks Sixers playoff matchup. I don't know Knicks Sixers playoff matchups. It's tough. It's tough when the Sixers don't make it far in the playoffs. But make it to a conference finals.
They were close. They were literally a couple bounces away against Toronto from getting there.
Did they? No. No.
You're gonna win a lot of Knicks fans over with this. I will say.
No, it's make a conference finals. Do that. Have you tried doing that? You haven't done that since Allen Iverson. Try doing that. If you're gonna have a 2-time, okay. If it's gonna be a 2-time MVP, you have to have at least made the conference finals. Come on.
I agree.
Come on.
I will say this was maybe fair or unfair. This was part of a narrative with Jokic until last season. I know he made it in the bubble, but that was like you made it once and in the bubble.
Thing too. That's where it started.
That's true.
It was a lot of people with votes saying, "Yeah, we can't give Giannis a third one because they lost in the bubble," and they've only made a conference finals, which is an accomplishment that Sixers fans would pray for. They'd go through the streets, they'd climb up those poles or whatever they do if they made the conference finals. That's Philly, right? I'm not mixing that.
That is Philly. No, that is Philly. Yes.
Yeah, just for making a conference finals. But Giannis being 2 games away from the finals is not enough to win a third MVP, even though he went out and did it. But that's the same thing Jokic did as well. But at least like Jokic made a conference finals. Giannis made a conference finals before winning second MVP. The Philadelphia 76ers should go to a conference finals before Joel Embiid wins the second MVP. I'm sorry. I feel like you should be disqualified. That's not the point of this pod.
Listen, I'm here for the anti-Philadelphia slander. I'm always here for Philadelphia slander. Believe me, they my rivals in just about every sport. Not the Eagles, because I'm a Jets fan, but like competence is the Jets' rival. So there's a different conversation. I know you're from in the Wisconsin area. I'm sure I talked about this with Ty last time. The Packer season hasn't been what you've wanted, but you've at least got to enjoy what's happened with the Jets.
There's still a chance of a playoff spot. So,
well, for the Packers, yes, they're still in play, and with the NFC the way they are. But obviously, the Jets were eliminated right before activating Aaron to the active roster.
Shout out to what was his name? I forget the guy who got waived so he could be
Tim Boyle. Yeah. The guy that got waived for Aaron we're talking about a fullback that was part of an offensive protection last week that got Zach Wilson concussed. I'm not exactly like, he was quite literally the last man on the roster. He was like, Aaron, come on, come practice with us. The funny part about the whole thing is like I'm pretty sure he was never going to play anyway. And now he's going to come out and take a knee. Like, that's how this season's going to end. Aaron Rodgers is going to take the field, be able to say he came back from an Achilles, and will just take a knee. Now, that may be a
very Aaron Rodgers thing to do.
And the funny thing about it is it's going to be against the Patriots. It's going to ruin their draft positioning. It's going to send Belichick off into the sunset and get either into the sunset or solidify him getting the quarterback that's then going to haunt Jet fans' lives for the next 20 years again. Okay, this has now become a Jets podcast. The Knicks play the Bucks twice on Saturday and then again on Christmas on Monday. Real quick, do you have any questions about the Knicks or opinions in general about the Knicks? I like to hand the pod over to my guest, my co-host for the day, before we leave. So any general thoughts or questions about the New York Knicks?
Yeah, what's the front court plan?
Mitchell Robinson out?
Mitchell Robinson out and Jericho Sims now being sidelined too. Like, first of all, awful, horrible news. Just do not want to see that ever again. Pray for help for everyone. But what's the plan? Especially against you have 2 games against the Bucks.
Yeah. So we'll say we love Isaiah Hartenstein in this house and loved him as a backup. There were moments last year, before the Cavs series at least, there were moments last year where we wondered if Knicks weren't better off in crunch time, like with closing with Hartenstein, because how it opens up the rim, how it opens up the things you can do with your center. Mitch he's very much a one-trick pony. He's a rim runner and potentially like an offensive rebound machine, but you're not calling plays or really running offense through him. So what Isaiah Hartenstein can do will be a different, but I think still effective starting center, and we'll see how the defense holds up with a larger sample size of him on the court more. As far as backup center is concerned, can I interest you in one 38-year-old Taj Gibson for these 2 games at least?
I saw a tweet the other day. I wish I could give credit to it, but it was very funny. It's like the only consistent thing in the past decade has been Tom Thibodeau wearing Taj Gibson out to the point of exhaustion.
Shout out to the one of the aggregation accounts in Knicks Twitter, IQ for 3. They just took a screenshot of Taj Gibson looking exhausted exhausted. And the caption was like, he didn't come back for this, man. He was on his couch last week. And now Tibbs has him in like all these pick and roll coverages against the Nets team. And he just, I feel so bad because we love Taj over here. But like he's hilarious. In his second decade getting run ragged by Tom Thibodeau. And it sucks because like it's, like the craziest part about it is this is 37, 38-year-old Taj Gibson looking like most 37, 38-year-olds are supposed to at this age. And then we just saw LeBron on Monday, a year older, get a triple-double against us. And it's like, okay, that's not how 39-year-olds are supposed to look. But lo and behold, Father Time is undefeated except by one person who's apparently going to defeat him. I think the plan is to just kind of hold water right now, maybe some Julius at the 5. We saw it for a little bit against the Nets on Wednesday. They didn't get a rebound when he was in the game. So it's like people have been clamoring for Julius at the 5 for a while now, since the Obi Toppin days. And like you might be able to play small and have a different look you throw at teams. You just have no rim protection and no real rebounding strategy when you do. So I think that the plan is just to wait it out. The schedule lightens up when you get to January a little bit and then see what the market looks like. I could see, Jericho Sims is gone for a week. And then we'll see how bad his ankle is. And then I think he could be a 7 to 12 minute backup. I think Taj Gibson, once he gets into some semblance of playing shape, could be a 7 to 12 minute backup. And then you go to the trade market. Andre Drummond seems to be the guy Knicks fans are targeting. The Bulls might have actually started to figure it out, though, post Zach LaVine. So who knows if they're going to be in the market to sell. But that's, as far as I'm concerned, it's for these two games against the Bucks. It's like Ichuidi's Taj going into both of these games. And I maybe this is false hope, but I actually do have some confidence in Hartenstein in a matchup because Knicks have just struggled with stretch 5s when Mitch is on the floor. And I think Hartenstein can be some like 1% better than Mitchell Robinson because his default isn't backpedal and drop coverage and rim protection. He can provide both as well as get out to the 3-point line and defend Brook in ways that Mitch wasn't able to.
Yeah, the one thing about Mitchell Robinson is whenever I've talked about Bucks-Knicks matchups in the past, he's the person who was the X factor for me in all of those matchups because he is one of the few centers in the league who is just like straight up longer than Brook and will be able to like keep up with him and give him some trouble. And the thing with Mitchell Robinson, you mentioned it is sort of a slight that he's not able to keep up with Brook Lopez really at the 3-point line or stretch 5s in general. That's probably a good thing because that means Brook's shooting a lot of threes, which is bad for the Bucks.
Oh, you don't want him taking a lot of threes.
He takes a lot of early shot clock threes, and it makes me upset because, like we talked about earlier, the Bucks have a lot of shooters that were able to knock down these wide open looks. They're generating great looks. It's tough for him to. It's not tough for him. You probably can do it. He does not pass the ball. I love Brook Lopez to death, don't get me wrong, but he takes a lot of ill-advised threes, which almost plays into the Bucks' favor when you have a guy like Mitchell Robinson who is not going to be the best guy out on the 3-point line. So that plus he was able to really stay with him inside as well. So when unfortunately he's going to be out for the rest of the season, just it was probably a win for the Bucks in that regard because Mitchell Robinson really like he is the guy who like scares me the most in a Bucks Knicks matchup, not because of like he's going to be like gaudy scorer or anything or anything like that, but he is like he can kind of be like throw like a wrench into the works of how the Bucks really operate. So we'll see what Isaiah Hartenstein's able to do. I just don't know who's guarding Giannis on this team.
It was Julius last time. Not that it was, but it was Julius last time.
Yes. You know? And they're going to have to stick with it being Julius. I will say when you mentioned Julius Randle at the 5, that's also a very intriguing thing because like we've talked about, the Bucks aren't a great defensive team. If like a team like the Knicks who can go out and outrun the Bucks, just get a higher pace of play, yeah, that's a good option against the Milwaukee Bucks because they will give up threes. They will give up like mid-range jumpers. Like if you have a guy like Jalen Brunson who's going to go off and be able to do what he did in that first matchup against the Bucks, where I believe he had 45?
45 in that game. Yeah.
45 against the Bucks, and it made it a really, really close game. One thing the Bucks, now that I bring this up, they've done a good job against the Knicks, is they've only allowed one of those guys to go off in a given game. Whether it was the Bucks doing or not in the first matchup, that is to be determined.
Julius was going through it, man. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows what the cause was. He was going through it, though.
It wasn't the finest showing and the best showing I've ever seen.
No, it was not. No, it was not. No,
I say that with the utmost respect.
My goodness, it was. Anything that could go wrong, he was doing it. Like that. That's what those first 6 games of the season were.
And I don't want to be reductive in saying this, but I feel like we've seen 2 outlier games so far in these 2 matchups. We've seen a bad Julius Randle game, and we've seen an insane Milwaukee Bucks shooting game. But the thing is, while they're not going to reach those levels again against I think they just hit another 3 that counts. We're not going to see those levels again, but like we've talked about, they're going to be able to generate a lot of high quality looks. They're going to have to collapse around Giannis because Giannis is going to draw help if Julius Randle's the assignment. And one thing the Bucks are starting to figure out a little bit more is how getting Dame and Giannis involved at the same time. Early on in the season, it's been a lot of, okay, this is a Dame game. Okay, this is a Giannis game. Okay, this is a Dame game. Now we're starting to see, oh, this is a Dame and Giannis game. Oh, this is Dame's going off. Giannis is going to have a career high in assists sort of game. They're feeding into each other. And by the way, it's one player we have not talked about. Chris Middleton is playing a lot of basketball. He's ramping up. He's a consistent around 30 minutes per game guy now. Yeah, he's another guy who he's not going to, in a matchup against the Knicks, I don't really think Knicks fans have to worry about a Chris Middleton. Because they have the guys to throw on him. Like if you want to throw like a Quentin Grimes or something on Chris Middleton, you can really slow him down because he's not going to break anyone down off the dribble anymore. In fact, I've seen a lot of Chris Middleton dribbling up the floor, and it's giving me a headache because he's like, in order to try and get past a guy who's pressing him, he's like posting him up from 3/4 court, and it's like, bro, just give it to Dame, give it to Malik Beasley, and just get to your spot, man. You're not that guy anymore. But I still very, very much value Chris Middleton. I predict he's not going to have the strongest games in either of these 2 matchups, but I'd be going against my own brand if I did not mention Chris Middleton when talking about the Milwaukee Bucks.
I mean, completely fair with Middleton. I think I could see them putting Josh Hart on Middleton and then going. The Quentin Grimes part of it all is interesting because he's like low key playing himself out of the rotation. Not that he shouldn't. I'm not even sure if it's deserved or not, and whether they just have better options. But like the Knicks do have a bit of. I know when I say death lineup, people go to that Golden State one that just was unbeatable for years, and then. I'm not saying the Knicks have that, but they do have this lineup with it's really the 4-man combo of Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Emmanuel Quickley. It's plus like 35 per 100 possessions whenever they're on the court together with any center. And like as a result, you want to play that lineup as much as possible. It involves 2 bench players. So Quentin Grimes, who just got moved to the bench, his minutes get cut a bit. I mean, Dante DiVincenzo's shooting 45% from 3. His minutes you don't want to cut too much as the starting 2 guard now. And then RJ Barrett has held his own on defense. I don't think he's going to be the like next Paul George that we saw from the first 6 or 7 games, but I think he is serviceable enough that like 20 to 25 minutes is exactly what you want from RJ. And so when your best like point of attack defender, Quentin Grimes, like you probably need him to guard Dame, but when you have like just better options at the 2 guard spot, I'm very curious where they go in a spot like this, you know? So it's going to create some matchups that are interesting. Now, it may not matter if you're telling me that they're going to get a Dame and a Giannis game, but you know, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, in fact, a matchup against the Knicks, it's probably more. It's more likely to see a Giannis game than a than a Dame game because, like you mentioned, they have stronger like wing or guard defenders than they do like big defenders, especially with Mitchell Robinson out. Even though like Robinson never was the primary Giannis defender, he would always be lurking, which was just like he would be very, very smart in how he sort of left Brook and sort of helped on Giannis being like sort of a roaming threat. It's funny you bring up RJ Barrett because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the last matchup against the Knicks, RJ Barrett and Chris Middleton sort of matched minutes a little bit, and they were sort of playing against each other at times. And RJ Barrett is another guy who will probably feast on a Chris Middleton because Chris is. Yeah, I yearn for the days when Chris was a 3-and-D guy before he slipped on a wet spot in the Cousins Center, and which is just sent everything into haywire. But RJ is going to be able to roast Chris Middleton. He's going to be able to do so. He's going to be able to get past him. He's going to be able to do whatever he wants with him. Even though he's a little bit smaller than Chris, whether he's going to be able to stop Chris from, doing his patented turnaround fades or anything like that remains to be seen. How he's going to handle like a Giannis or Chris Brook pick and roll, that remains to be seen. But that's a matchup where I can really see it going either way. Because if RJ Barrett is going to be able to roast Chris Middleton, but Chris Middleton's also going to be able to get his own against RJ Barrett, I think that leans in the Bucks direction because they're sort of, I like to think of Chris as the canary in the coal mine for the Bucks offense, in that if he's not doing well, that means the team isn't doing well because he should be the guy that's really feasting on all of the defenders being thrown at Giannis, at Dame. He's supposed to be the guy who's like massively overqualified to be a tertiary creator. And if he's not being able to feast, not being able to go out, get a scoring outburst, or not even a scoring outburst, but like a playmaking outburst as well, that's an issue because he's that release valve. And if the release valve isn't working, that means you can even further load up on guys like Giannis and guys like Dame. So if Chris Middleton is sort of struggling against a guy like an RJ Barrett, against a Josh Hart, I'm so jealous of Josh Hart, by the way. I'm so jealous of Josh Hart. Josh Hart would be a perfect Buck. He'd be a perfect Buck. Like an absolutely perfect Milwaukee Buck, but I have two players who I've just always been on my short list of they would be perfect. Josh Hart, Larry Nance Jr. I think those two would be perfect fits next to, especially Damian Lillard now. And I just want to make it known that I'm very, very jealous of Josh Hart. But if Chris is against a Josh Hart, against an RJ Barrett, and we'll see what happens with Quentin Grimes, whether he takes like a point guard assignment or not, I think he's also a guy who will give Chris Middleton a lot of trouble. Whether Chris is limited by these Knicks defenders, which is why I said earlier, I don't think he's going to be able to have a big game in either of these matchups. That's really going to dictate how this Bucks offense really flows. And at the end of the day, it also might not matter because the Knicks front court is kind of decimated right now. I mean, besides Hartenstein, it might not matter because Giannis is one of the best players in the world. So if he could go out there, he can score 60. It wouldn't surprise me. And that might be it. That's if you want to talk about 1A guys, that's Giannis. It might not matter, but if Chris Middleton is limited, I would not be shocked. Again, I am not going to be shocked if these are close games, even with the injuries that are sustained by the New York Knicks. I would not be surprised if these are close games because they're sort of they're very similar in the way they're constructed, like we talked about earlier. Julius struggles, so they went out and got Jalen Brunson, so guys don't load up on Julius. Same thing happened to Giannis and Dame. These are two teams who are sort of this Knicks team actually reminds me of the Bucks of previous years, not this year, in that they can be a grinded out type of defense. Oh, but also they have a massive scoring threat. It's like if you added Damian Lillard in a lesser regard. Let me say that. It's like if you added Damian Lillard to last year's Bucks team where they had, or 2 years ago's Bucks team where they had all this PJ Tuckers, you have Drew Holidays, you have these type of point of attack and wing defenders, and you have a front court threat and you have a back court threat. So it's it's a very well constructed team. So even if Giannis goes out there, scores 50, scores 60, I could still see this being a very close game. Games, I should say, because there's two. Yeah. Because the schedule is weird.
Yeah, we appreciate the weird schedule. I think So that last Bucks game, it actually brought a lot of agita from our audience and the vocal part of the Knicks fan base about the overall defensive strategy against Milwaukee, the overhelp, the drop coverage. Should they just switch everything? And the Knicks, like, to their credit, like, did try to switch up their coverages when the Bucks weren't missing. It's just then you're stuck with Dame and Giannis one-on-one, and we don't have the people to guard Dame and Giannis one-on-one. And like they did the same thing against the Celtics, where they were dropping initially, and like Porzingis hit 3 threes in the first couple minutes. Then they switched in the second half, and it seemed to be more effective. But like the Celtics still scored 140 points that night. And I think that's my thought going into this specific 2-game matchup is: do we see the Knicks switch up their coverages at all and just live with Giannis getting 50 if it means no one else goes off? Do they if they're hitting their threes, I think the Knicks have a real shot to, like you said, make it close, because that's like been a trend this year, that if this is an under 35% from 3 game, we might be looking at movie times in the second half. But if they're able to, like, it is part of their strategy that if they're hitting their threes and they also, like you said, generate a ton of quality looks, then yeah, this is going to be a close game in the fourth quarter. So I guess we'll see which version of these teams show up for both of these matchups. I've kept you way longer than I said I would. I really appreciate you giving me the time, but I guess this needed to be a.
I will talk basketball for as long as I can.
Well, good, because this probably needed to be a bit of a supersized. This is a short pod. Oh, yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're gonna end it here. But this was indeed a supersized version of the pregame pod, because these two teams played twice, so we needed to double up on the time for today. Rohan, before you get out of here, tell the fine folks at home where they could find you and all your stuff.
Co-host of the Gyro Step on GSPN. Find all of our links at gspn.info. You have me and Ty talking Bucks. We have Adam McGee, Jordan Tresky also talking Bucks. We also have other Wisconsin regional sports like Packers, Brewers. If there are any Packers, Brewers fans listening to this, Talk of the Tundra, Cruising for a Brews, and we also all links to gspn.info. But yeah, that's just gspn.info. That's where you can find all of our stuff.
Yes. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I'd wish you luck, but I wouldn't mean it in either of these games. But for the rest of the season, I wish you and, of course, the GSPN crew the best of luck.
Thank you. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas to all of you listeners, and you as well.